Okay, so in thinking of all the different things we could talk about, a couple of things came to mind. One is that we've recently had people on from different cancer centers,
Mm,
one being Gerson, and there's other ones. And a lot of people have been cured by long juice fasting on cancer. That's been done.
sure.
However, water, if you can set up a situation to do it, has big advantages. And one of the things that I wanted to look at is you had mentioned when you're finished water fasting, it really matters what you eat. If you eat, you can do a lot of damage after, especially a long fast, by really messing up the beginning of your solid food. And one of the cancer center operators was telling me, well, cancer patients are typically really have low energy, and they're struggling to live, which is, of course, often true if it's advanced.
Yeah.
And they said because of that, they can't use raw food because it's too hard to digest. And he said, like I told you before, you can't eat a cabbage and broccoli salad with grated carrots and beets if you are an almost dead cancer patient. And I said,
Right.
that's true, but that's not the only kind of raw food there is.
No. And I mean, as you may be aware, I wouldn't recommend anyone eats that way.
Right. So what's the deal about how to break a fast?
We break fasts on high water content fruit.
Okay.
The options, the first 2 days here, we have watermelon, papayas, and fresh coconuts all year long here.
Nice. Huh.
So those are the only 3 options the first 2 days. Barring very unusual circumstances, we might offer something else if necessary for some reason.
Why don't you explain also, remember, you're not talking to people that all live in Costa Rica. So what's a fresh coconut? Most people have never seen one.
Right. Well, so fresh coconuts are large green or yellow things. Bigger than my head typically, as big almost. Yeah. And we actually buy them peeled already, because when we're busy here, we may need to open 50 or 60 of them in a particular meal. Okay. And if we had to hack through the whole thing, that would take way too long. We wouldn't be able to do that. So we buy them peeled, and they stay refrigerated. If you go to Trader Joe's, for instance, you will see the brown, hairy coconut.
And the inside is hard and fairly dry.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but they usually are. The
ones up here, yeah.
Right. The thing is, that brown, hairy coconut is inside every coconut.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the inside of every single coconut. But that's the inside. So you've got this green or yellow husk, and then you've got a bunch of white, hard flesh, and then inside of that is this brown coconut. So we get them already where they've taken the green or yellow husk off, but they stay refrigerated. Otherwise, they're only good for 5-6 days. After that, they go bad. They go rancid quickly. So when they're sitting at room temperature on a shelf, I wouldn't buy those.
Interesting. So,
honestly, if you're not in the tropics, you probably shouldn't be drinking coconut water.
Well, and especially the fairly dried out, hard white meat.
No, exactly. Honestly, here where we have young coconuts, where the flesh is usually still, sometimes it's gelatinous and sometimes it's a little harder than that. I almost never eat it, because the cleaner the body gets, the less concentrated fat and protein it wants. Right. And so a little bit of that stuff is too much for me.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we don't really see coconuts in a fresh state up here.
Probably not. Now, it's possible. You might find like a big Asian market where they might have whole ones. Usually they've got the brown ones. If you can find a whole coconut, or a Caribbean market, if you can find those somewhere, those are okay. You can get them shipped from Florida.
I know. They're really expensive, but you can do it.
No, exactly. I was going to say, what I said was, but they're prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So, but mainly you end the fast with very high water content fruit.
That's right. And so, in North America, you can get citrus in the wintertime. You can use melons in the summertime. Berries are high in water and they work well. Okay. Any of those things are fine. Honestly, and you may be aware of this, but throughout history, most of the experts on fasting would say the same thing, which is you don't want to fast more than 5 to 7 days maximum without having experienced guidance. it makes such a difference. It makes such a difference. So, but anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
That's what we do, by the way, is we start people off with multiple very small meals. Because most people, in fact, while the average person, if they're planning on fasting 26 days, by day 23 or 24, they're really thinking about eating again.
Okay.
And yet their body would be happy to keep going. The body actually wants to continue cleansing and healing, right? And so there's no hunger because the body doesn't actually want food.
So it's psychological.
And so we have to gently jumpstart the apostat. So we do multiple frequent meals the first day, and then the second day they're a little further apart and larger, and the third day they're further apart and larger, and then the fourth, depending on the length of the fast, I mean, we get to a point where they stay in the same schedule, but the meals get larger each day, and doing that properly makes an enormous difference.
And that's a transition period that you're referring to as refeeding, right?
That's correct. That's right. Yeah. In case, for anyone listening, you don't complete a long fast and then get on a plane and go home. You need to you need to have this period where any fasting center is going to insist, require you to do the refeeding process.
For that.
Isn't
there a ratio of time how long that should be compared to the fast?
Well, everyone has their own ratios. What we do here is different than what anybody else does in multiple ways in terms of how much water people are drinking. Again, I became very conscious of the issues around hydration and dehydration. There are experts out there, many doctors who still say there's no mucoid plaque, there's no old hard material. Give me just a second here. Let me see if this is the right window. I have a window here, if I can figure out which one it is. I've got too many windows open, but I have a client who just completed a 30-day fast. He's been refeeding now for about, he completed a 12-day refeeding process and actually finished with us a few days ago. And then he asked me to do a consultation with him yesterday and asked me if he could come back into the group for another week.
Yeah.
Because he felt like he needed more support. So I've got his numbers here in front of me, and I can tell you that one of the things we do is we track bowel movements, right? So through the fast, let's see, while fasting, he had 25 bowel movements. During the 12 days we're feeding.
How long days. 30 days, okay.
30 days.
Almost one a day.
Yeah, over 12 days of refeeding, he had, and there were none the first three days, over 9 days of refeeding, he had 78 bowel movements.
Wow.
Excuse me, he had 78 solid bowel movements, and he had 15 more in 9 days. Okay, so more than one movement a day of some sort, which were just parasites. Just parasites.
Oh.
Now, he never eliminated a parasite in his life, and there's no herbs, there's no substances.
Yeah, people think you have to take parasite medicine to kill the parasites and all that.
No, you get your body clean enough, and the body knows exactly what to do. So, and then now here's the crazy thing. So he just completed. He's in Austria, so he's asleep now. But I have his numbers up here because we're using a live, a Google document, a spreadsheet that he updates. I can see the numbers. He has, let's see, so he may not have updated it before. He'll update it tomorrow morning. But so far in the first 5 days since completing the process, I mean, he's now extending the process with me, but it's from day 13 to day 17, he's had 50 more bowel movements in 5 days, 50 solid ones, and 3 that were just parasites, so 53. Okay.
Wow.
So we're talking about, the average day is now more than 10 per day, almost 11 each of these days. And I'm talking about stuff that is, so let me back up. He's now eating watermelon, fresh cherries. He lives an hour outside of Vienna, up in the mountains, beautiful there. He's got fresh cherries now. He's got melons, local melon. This is what he's eating, high water content fruits, and he's having bowel movements that are hard and painful and foul. And this is the old stuff that's been building up in his body for the last 40 plus years.
That's
what's moving up.
This is the way to do surgery.
Exactly. Now, and in fact, I mean, here's the thing. So we see people, we have one real competitor now in North America. Unfortunately, all the rest are gone. There's a place in Northern California, and they're fast there are supervised by doctors. Some people think that's an advantage. Doctors are again, as I said earlier, I didn't let my formal schooling get in the way of my education.
Yeah,
right.
Your school interfere with the education.
Right, exactly. Unfortunately, when someone goes through medical school, it's very difficult to not let that interfere.
Yeah.
And so they end your fast there early all the time, because any one of your vital signs is outside of the normal range. That's what has to happen when your body's cleansing and healing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we're constantly seeing these people with their vital signs outside of the normal range, and yet they complete fasts here that are an average of 26 days and are often as long as 40 or 42 days and have been as long as 4.5 months. And we see 4.5 months was a young man who had stage 4 testicular cancer, and he was morbidly obese. And when he finished, there was no trace of cancer.
And a lot of the fat was gone, I suspect, too.
Oh, yes. But when people come so every year we'll have 6 to 12 people who already did a fast at our competitor in California, where their fasts average 10 or 11 days. They're told to limit how much water they drink, and they keep people active. Here, we tell people to rest completely. They drink much more water, and their fasts are more than 2.5 times as long. And when people come to me that had already been there, first thing I'll say is, how much old material did you eliminate? And they'll say, what do you mean? Because they have no idea.
They never saw any, right?
Never. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
A lot of cancer patients are very weak and not very obese at all. I mean, they're pretty thin. Yeah,
that's right.
What happens with them?
Well, fortunately, I mean, again, I mean, with cancer, it depends. Obviously, with early stage cancers, we have a very high rate of success. Yeah. With stage 4 cancer, it's much more difficult. Yeah. And some people make it and some don't. Sometimes it is too late, at least for water fasting. Yeah. But we do see a lot of success with people. It just depends on what's going on with them and how far advanced it is.
What about
lots of other factors.
What about the non-tumor type cancers like leukemia variants and things like that?
Yeah. Leukemia can do well. It can be difficult. Lymphoma, which I guess is tumors, it's just in the lymphatic system, usually does very well, although each case is different. Right. I mean, it's a little hard to generalize because there's so many variables. But yeah,
it's still, if it's going to be healed, this is the kind of approach that would heal it, basically.
Well, that's been my experience, and therefore it's my belief. And what I would say, coming back to your earlier question, how do people do when they start very, very lean? What happens is the leaner somebody is, the less weight they lose. So I think you told me when we spoke last, you've been watching my videos for a while. Yes. Okay, and maybe longer than Gazelle. There's a young Russian woman now who she's fasted with me 3 times as a client. She first came to me 4 or 5 years ago in the spring, and she came back about 2 years ago, and she had in the interim she had divorced her husband, and didn't really have any place in particular she needed to go. And she wanted to stay here to volunteer. And she's been here now for more than 2 years. Wow. She now does all of my videos. So every time I give a lecture, she sets up her iPhone on a tripod, records it for me, edits it for me, does the whole thing, gets it up for me. She does all of that. And it's a good thing because I don't have time to. On YouTube. That's right. And you can probably tell when she started doing it because the quality went way up. She does a much better job than I used to. Okay. I mean, she's really, really diligent with it and does beautiful work. Wow. When she first came here to fast, she had undiagnosed type 1 diabetes. And so her blood sugar was very high. And it's almost like you're speeding. It's hard to gain weight. She's 5'7" plus and weighed 88 pounds. Whoa. Yeah.
That's not Very good.
No, and if she went to any other fasting center, they'd have said, you can't fast. And I said, yeah, you can fast, because what happens, again, no one has the experience I have with long fasts. And so what I know from experience is, they say you lose a pound a day. Well, you lose a pound a day. In fact, you lose more than a pound a day the first week, and a pound a day the second week on average. And then the third week and after that, if you're the average person, you lose quite a bit less than that. You only lose the average person loses 3 pounds the third week. But what happens for so the average person loses 21 pounds in 21 days, but it's 11, 7, and 3 on average.
I see.
Okay? And it doesn't vary much. It doesn't vary much unless someone is very large or very small. So when we see people who are very big, they could lose 100 pounds instead of 21. And we see someone who's very small, she lost 8.8 pounds. She lost 40
in 3 weeks?
In 21 days fasting, she lost 40% as much as the average person does.
Wow.
That's what happens when someone's very lean. They simply lose weight much more slowly. Now, they feel very, very weak because their body is basically saying, don't move. Don't want to waste any reserve.
I want the energy for healing, in other words.
Exactly.
And then how much muscle mass is lost, and how long does it take to get it back?
Well, I'm really glad you asked the follow-up question, because the first question for the average person, let's see, what is it? It's probably going to be 6 or 7 pounds the first week, and then it goes down by about half, and then it goes down by half again in the third week. It's just assuming 21 days fasting. So the average person might lose between 8 and 10 pounds. Women a little bit less. This is guys. Women a bit less on average. Now, here's the thing. Muscle mass should be close to 80% water. For the average person is probably closer to 60 to 65% water. But even still, if someone loses 10 pounds of muscle, they've actually lost 6.5 pounds of water and 3.5 pounds of actual muscle.
Okay.
And so when we complete the process, if it's done correctly, people are so much more vibrant and efficient than they were before that they rebuild muscle really quickly.
Okay, that's important. Yeah.
Usually. Yeah, I mean, usually it's very quick. What's up? What's up, buddy?
And I think your approach to people without a lot of body fat with cancer, allowing them to fast, that's evolved, because I think years ago you didn't think some of those people could fast, right?
That's right. I mean, there are people that are too lean to fast, but most people aren't. Most people can still, I mean, obviously someone who is anorexic or severely depleted from advanced cancer or AIDS, they probably aren't going to be able to fast.
Yeah.
If they don't have, if they, you know, you do need to have some.
They could go on some kind of a really pure diet, right? And that would be cleansing.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I'm not such an advocate of juices. So what I would do instead is I would put somebody on high water content, easy to digest foods like watermelon.
Really
papaya.
soft stuff, right?
Exactly. Very easy to digest, very high in water. And that you know, the body can still cleanse and heal quite a bit, less than with water fasting, obviously. But I believe it's safe, the safest way, where we're not going to be flooding the body with too much of anything.
Yeah. Well, you know about Dr. Morse in Florida.
I do.
And he was on the show too, and he said he does a similar thing, because he puts people like on 100% grapes or things like that, and he's had some amazing cures from doing that, including some that I think are kind of mystifying, because he's had a couple of cases of reattachment of severed spinal cords from doing that.
Yeah, that's a little hard to believe. I don't know.
It is. I mean, I wasn't there, so I can't say if it's true.
Right.
But everybody seems to think so. So,
well, who knows? I don't know what to say. I'm not sure if that's possible, but perhaps.
But amazing things can happen. You know, even if you can't fast on water, if you're in that category you just described, and you're doing the fruit version, it can still be really successful.
Well, that's right. And as I alluded to earlier in the show, our amazing bodies are, in every moment of our lives, are attempting to cleanse and heal. So this is why people adopt a macrobiotic diet and heal often, right? I mean,
because compared to what they were doing before, it's tremendously cleansing, right?
exactly. In my opinion, it's far from a healthy diet.
Yeah.
Almost everything is cooked. They don't want you to eat anything raw.
It's like a brown
everything's
rice
cooked.
fast or something.
It's brown rice, and there's all kinds of soy products, tofu, and other things.
Yeah.
Seitan and
heavy salt,
vegetables, and heavy salt, and things that are cooked for hours sometimes.
Yeah.
And yet people do get better sometimes, and the reason why is because
but the Osawa, I think, was the guy who started it, right? And the first book I saw from him was in the 60s.
Yeah.
He looked awful. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. One of the things I used to say when I speak about it, I mean, it's kind of ironic because when I speak and I tell people I eat a raw vegan diet, they're like, "Oh, raw food, that's kind of like macrobiotics, right?" And I say, well, it's kind of the opposite of macrobiotics because macrobiotics, almost everything's cooked. They don't want you to eat salad or fruit, except for things like umeboshi plums, which come only from Japan. Pickled plums. There's really no fresh food, I eat everything fresh. Nothing's cooked, and when I talk about this, my introduction to macrobiotics years ago, my brother-in-law introduced me to an old friend of his who was separated from her husband, and she was living in San Diego. She'd grown up in D.C. I was living in D.C. Right. She'd come back to visit because one of her best friends was the private chef to the princess of Saudi Arabia. And the prince and princess of Saudi Arabia have a castle in McLean, Virginia.
Wow.
They don't live in Saudi. They live in, I'm not sure if they're still there. This was many, many years ago. This was more than 30 years ago. So they had this castle in McLean, Virginia, across the river from Washington, D.C. And they bought their chef like a $500,000 house out in Great Falls, Virginia, and about 15, 20 minutes up the Potomac River. And every day they would send a chauffeured car out to pick up food for the 25 or 26 members of the princess's entourage who were eating. She had children and staff members that all ate a macrobiotic diet. And this woman was preparing all the food. And it was this big house because the mandate was also, she was, to take in anyone that was interested in following this diet. The princess was going to let them stay there for free and provide the food. Pretty cool. So the princess was traveling, and when she traveled, she took her chef with her, but not the entire entourage didn't travel with her. So they still needed a macrobiotic chef. So this woman, Gina, flew in from San Diego to prepare food for the rest of the household while the princess was traveling. And she was in D.C. for a month or so. Anyway, my brother-in-law introduced me. We hit it off and wound up dating for a year. But I would spend a lot of time with her because she had to prepare food every single day for these people. And so I was often there with her. I was running my own business, had some flexibility. She was beautiful. I was probably playing hooky more than I should have. But she would literally cook some of these dishes for 6 to 8 hours. Yeah. And things were cooked until everything was gray. And you could tell what was what by the shape of it. And what I realized as I started to meet more of her friends, she had a lot of friends who also ate a macrobiotic diet. And what I realized was that all these people, their complexion was the same color as the food. Yeah, which makes sense. They might have healed from something, but and I started thinking, well, Einstein taught us that energy can be neither created nor destroyed. So where are they getting energy to create vital living tissue? Which is the main food that's been cooked for hours. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So interesting that she was trying to understand what you were talking about too. Right. When you guys would discuss it. Yeah. Well. Yeah. She never quite. I mean, I think she understood it on some level. And her chiropractor ex-husband had convinced her that it was a bad idea to eat a raw vegan diet. Yeah, a lot of people sincerely think that. Right, exactly. Just the application. Well, we have a lot more to talk about, so let's look forward to the next sections. And well, thank you. That was great. My pleasure, guys. Yeah, thanks very much, both of you. Take care, guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.